Everyone, this is Innovator's Mindset with Lainie Rowell. There we go. Lainie, my good friend Lainie, just so you know, your like podcast background is just beautiful.
Are
It's
you
very nice.
serious right
Yeah,
now?
it's
That's
very
making
nice. I just love it. This is really nice.
you.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know.
And
I'm like my little ring light. I might need to. Well, I'm not. I don't know. It's not whatever. I don't know. It just doesn't look right, and you know.
can I ask for a point of clarification? You said good friend? Hmm.
Great. What did
Yeah.
I say? Sorry, best friend. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that what I was
I
supposed to say?
mean,
Best friend. Okay, my
okay.
best friend.
Okay. Take
So
two. And
listen, Lainey, you are like what? How many times have you been on the podcast? Was this fourth time, third time?
I think this is thrice. Yes.
Yeah,
Third
you're
time.
like like SNL, they have like five timer club. Like you got to be up there with that like most amount of people, or most amount of times on my podcast.
I'd like the velvet blazer whenever you're ready to do it this way.
I love it. Okay, so if you do not know Lainey, Lainey is absolutely amazing. She is the author of Evolving with Gratitude, Small Practices in Learning Communities that Make a Big Difference with Kids, Peers, and the World. I actually want to talk to you about this. She also has written Bold Gratitude. You can see the links to both of these books. And I really think there's a huge opportunity for people to focus on gratitude. And like when you find that you're great, and this is kind of some practice, and I've learned this from you over the years, and I've learned this from reading your books as well, that I think are really beneficial. I find that when you are so focused on all the things that you want in life, you kind of feel a little bit empty. But when you have an opportunity to kind of focus on what you already have, then I know this sounds weird, you tend to get more. It feels like I'm like, this is the secret. Like, is this Oprah all of a sudden we're doing this? Like, is that how people feel this? But I actually, you take gratitude. One of the things I do every single morning, I really try to wake up and focus on like, what am I going to do today? But also, what am I grateful for that I already have? And I don't know. And I think there's a real big opportunity here in the world because I think, there's a lot of mental health stuff and, focus on this. And if you constantly, you and I have talked about rumination quite a bit, that if you focus on what's wrong, everything sucks, you just kind of get into the spiral. But what have you found in the idea of like focusing on gratitude and how it's actually helped with, I don't want to say mental health because I know you're not a doctor, but maybe there are elements of that.
Well, the interesting thing about gratitude is I feel like it's this really easy thing to do that's also really easy not to do. Like it's so easy to say thank you and to show your appreciation for other people. But I think that also means that people just sometimes don't do it. They think they'll just do it another time.
Yeah.
And I really want to touch on your point about appreciating what you already have because it is so easy with our negativity bias, and people who are listening have probably heard that phrase before. This evolutionary adaptation we have to constantly be on the lookout for threat. It is so overactive these days. Most of us are not in a constant state of threat, but we're constantly looking for what's bad, what's going to get me. And when we cultivate what I call a grateful disposition, it's not just I am grateful. They're not just I feel grateful. It's like I am grateful. It's like my disposition. And I think that one of the practices that really resonates with me is counterfactual thinking. And it goes to what you were saying about like appreciating what you have. And so this will seem maybe counterintuitive, but the practice is that you think about someone or maybe an event in your life that was really, really important. And then you remove that person or that event from your life and you think really deeply about what would my life be like without that person or if this thing hadn't happened. And when you do that, you start to really go, oh my gosh, this is like a very important thing. I am so happy this person is in my life. And, or I'm so happy this event happened. Like, it's just such a beautiful practice. And so when you said, like, thinking about, the things that we have rather than just focusing on what's coming down the road potentially, that's like a practice that is super, super important to me. I talk about it in Evolving with Gratitude. I talk about it in Bold Gratitude because I don't think it's a practice that most people know about, but it's profoundly impactful.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of something I do, and I'm going to see if this is aligned with your practices. So, I'm very focused on my mental health, my physical health, and I do lots of long distance running. And the thing with distance running is it is probably more mental than it is physical. Like your
Mm.
mind starts to go. And part of it is you start to feel pain. Like the beginning of the run is typically easier for me, like except for right at the beginning, it's like there's a little bit of anxiety, like, oh, I got to do this thing today. Then you kind of get going, and then I can like kind of focus, but then you're like, oh, my, this hurts or this is sore. And I remember reading something about this, and this is where I want to kind of connect with you, is that when you focus on like something good, as opposed to like, hey, my knee hurts. If you focus on your knee hurting, it doesn't feel better. It actually gets worse. You start focusing on it. That's that whole rumination stuff that I was talking about earlier. But there's like, for example, I think about Marino running to me, and that actually lifts me up. And the weird thing is, it doesn't just kind of get my mind off the pain. I found that when I focus on really positive moments, like I think about like, hey, here's me focusing on a successful moment in my life. It doesn't just get my mind off it. It feels to give me energy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is connected to your work and what you're talking about, but that's something, in a process that I go through. That's something I've really tried to train my brain to think, because once I get caught up in the negative thinking, and it's not like, hey, my knee actually does hurt and it's going to hurt for a little while, but I get like, I still have to run. So I'm still
Yeah.
going. So how do I do this? So like, how do you see that connected to, your work with gratitude or some of the stuff that you've seen in this area?
Well, gratitude optimizes happiness, relationships, and performance. And it doesn't surprise me that you're talking about when you go on these brutal long runs, which
Mhm.
you have my mad respect for. I am not a runner.
Yeah.
But when we practice gratitude, we get this flood of happiness chemicals. And the two that are most commonly associated with gratitude are dopamine and serotonin. Well, dopamine isn't really about feeling good. Serotonin is more of the feel good chemical, but that dopamine is our motivation chemical. And so when you're thinking about Marino or your kids or your amazing wife, Paige, um, you're getting that hit of dopamine that is really motivating you to keep going. Even though you're doing a different activity, it's kind of keeping you going on the running, thinking about like, hey, life's pretty good. I got this, right? And so that doesn't surprise me. And I gave an example earlier, and I didn't go through the step by step of the counterfactual thinking, but all of the practices you want to go through kind of four things if you want to do like a deep, deep practice. And that is, you want to notice, you want to think, you want to feel, and you want to do. So you noticing how Marino runs to you when you get inside the house, like when he's just so excited to see you. And I know your girls are too. And by the way, I love your family so much. Like, oh, I'm missing them right now. I know we're on Zoom. I wish I was there to give them big hugs, but you notice it, but then you also take some time to think about like, oh my gosh, like I have this amazing wife and we've got these three kids, and like, wow, this all happened, and like, how did these things come to you? And then, oh, it makes me feel so loved and like I belong. And then, what can you do? Like, oh, when I get home, I'm going to give Marina the biggest hug because I'm so excited to see him. So that's like, those are kind of the framework. That's the framework of gratitude, if you will. Notice, think, feel, and do. If you want to do a deeper gratitude practice. So that's just something for those who are listening who are like, yeah, I've done a three things list. Like, that's great. But you really want to dig into trying to be specific and authentic. And going through the notice, think, feel, and do can help us with that.
Yeah, and like I think this is I always kind of like balk at this, like, oh, toxic positivity. Like I'm just like, whatever. Like I hear about toxic positivity. I rarely hear about toxic negativity, which is like like
Right.
I know some people that I'm like, I do not want to be around this person, and there's like, because there's always negative. And I think that when you do these things, and I think I'm trying to clarify this in my own brain. It's not that you're ignoring issues in your life. It's actually that you're trying to find good so you can deal with those issues. So you can deal with some of the pain. So you can deal with, hey, this is going on with my knee, but like I got to get through this race. So how, and this is obviously something I can deal with. So I think that to me, because a lot of times people will say this, but like if you are just in this negative spiral, focusing on what's wrong, everything, guess what? Things get worse. They don't actually get better. And that's something
Well,
that's always stuck with me. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what we do when we ruminate is, think about the neural pathways in our brain. When we ruminate, we are just basically building like a trench for that negative thought. We're just like, this path is going to be so deep and so well worn. I am going to gravitate to this path all the time. And we really do have that neuroplasticity that we know about as educators, that we can really change the way we think. And so when we are intentional in practicing gratitude, we are working against that. And I am so glad you brought up toxic positivity because, yes, I think what I initially got wrong with toxic positivity is that toxic positivity doesn't mean we don't want good vibes. It's that we don't say good vibes only. It's that we're not telling people that they're
Right.
not allowed to feel their feelings. They're allowed to feel their feelings. Eliza Pressman, who I get to have on my podcast pretty soon, says it so beautifully. All feelings are welcome, all behaviors are not. So it's like, yes, you can feel the feelings, but you can't behave in ways that are going to be offensive to your peers, to your teacher, to whoever. So I think that
Hmm.
this toxic positivity gets used sometimes incorrectly. It's
Yeah.
really, we all have permission to feel, but we can't just behave any certain way. And then for our own just well-being, we don't want to sit there building these trenches of negative, pathways through rumination.
Yeah. And I think like that is a reality is that sometimes when that the permission to like to kind of go through your own emotions and how you deal with things where it doesn't like hurt others, that's something that I think about quite a bit because sometimes I'm putting on a brave face not because I'm faking it for others but because that's how I have to deal with something in that moment. And so it's like, oh, you can't, no, I can be what I need to be. If this is affecting you, that's now I know it's like a horrible thing to say, it's kind of like a you issue, like a little bit. This is what I have to do to get through my day right now. So if you feel I'm like cheery and it's bugging you, that's a whole other thing than I'm like going out of my way to bother you. Is that fair to say? Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
sometimes I'm putting on a brave face because I got like I'm dealing with something, and if I just kind of like I can get into a spiral with it. Like that's something that I think about quite a bit. I feel like this
yeah.
is turning into a therapy session that everyone's getting to watch. Is this happening to me right now?
I mean, well, first of all, I have learned so much from you about well-being and all the different facets of it. And
Hmm.
so I think you are
I
such
get I get one I get one session in return. Was that what you said?
I don't feel like I'm giving you, I feel like we're having a conversation because it's just so interesting and it's so fascinating. And one of the things that I love about when because I'm a podcaster too, and when I get to interview these people is just we're all so different. I love the phrase unique and dynamic, and I've heard it from, again, Eliza Pressman, and I've heard it from
Hmm.
Katie Novak. And I think that's what's so fascinating is that we're all different. And then we also have to be able to come together in ways that are healthy and productive. And
Yep.
we're in these learning communities. And it's like really kind of intense when you think about what a classroom is, where we're bringing all these different personalities together. And we want it to be super healthy and we want to be thriving academically, socially, behaviorally. And so when we put gratitude as a priority, that is when we get to cultivate these healthy cultures where we're going to thrive academically, socially, and behaviorally. And that's why, there's a saying from Cicero, gratitude is the parent of all virtues. And so I just butchered it. Gratitude is not only the greatest of all virtues, but the parent of all others. And so I think that's important. That's why I keep putting it in the front. That's why I'm trying to raise the flag on it.
Yeah, and you mentioned this because this is a conversation that's coming up quite a bit in education. Is like there's behavioral stuff, there's a lot of mental health stuff, and I think a lot of times we talk about it with kids, but I think it's a lot with the adults too. And I don't think any adults would actually argue that point. I know that you do a lot of speaking with groups in schools. I know you do a lot of consulting as well. What's some of the work that you've done with school communities to I don't want to say like because we know you're not fixing the problem, right? Like that's and I don't think anybody can come into any organization because, you know, we have this conversation quite a bit. Like you can provide some ideas, some strategies, but ultimately, you know, you're not going to fix the problem of any school, but you can help them set up with strategies that may, you know, like maybe shift their thinking a little bit to
Yep.
focus more on gratitude practices and how that can, you know, benefit, because ultimately at the end of the day, they have to implement them and they have to see them. So like, what are some of the things that you're seeing with some of the work that you're doing in schools? What have you seen to be effective when implemented, you know, by educators, you know, and or with students?
Yeah. I mean, here's the great news. It's not like it's these massive shifts. It's actually these small shifts. And I think that when you're an educator and we're in this very noble, very important profession, I mean, we're impacting and you know, like you say, we don't always know our impact, right? And I think that the weight of being an educator, whatever your role in education is, I think sometimes we're so focused on the big rocks and the challenges and what's going on and how are we going to solve the budget issue? How are we going to
Right.
solve in the classroom any behavior issues? Like, how are we going to get through this? That we're so focused on the forest, we're not seeing the trees. And there's actually just really little things that we can do. And when I think about it within a school community, I think about, you know, how can we be grateful for kids, our peers, and the world? And really what that boils down to is like, we want grateful kids. Well, spoiler alert, you can't make grateful kids. Like, you cannot force gratitude. Like, think of the circle of control, like what's in your control versus what's not in your control. What's in your control, you can model it, you can story tell about gratitude, and you give space for kids to practice it, but you don't force it. And you have like the modeling is really obviously the critical one, but you're like narrating it while you're modeling. Oh my goodness. I am so grateful that you did that. And then you're very specific and authentic. You know, when you cleaned up those papers that fell, that was so helpful to me because I was over here teaching and I couldn't get to it. And you really just that meant a lot to me that I knew I could count on you to step up when I wasn't able to. I mean, it's like so silly, right? That was a very like little example of like papers fell on the floor. But there's just all these opportunities that we have for these moments in time. And then we can also, I like to use the three signature practices from Castle, which is a welcoming inclusion activity, engaging strategies, and an intentional close. So I like to think about, you know, what are ways that we could bring people into a learning experience? Like, so often we're teaching about things that are like super cool, but we don't even take like a half a moment to think about why do we care about plants? Like, what do they do for us? And so, you know, we can make these gratitude practices connected directly to the content, and I think we should, but we can also just have conversations about what we're grateful for in our learning community. And these are like small little things. Like one of the fun ones that I do is just take 30 seconds and think about the small joys in your life. And when I'm working with adults, I talk about it like pretend you're a 3-year-old and like look around. Like there's so many cool things. And again, it just goes back to that noticing. So giving the space for it, but not forcing it is probably a headline in education because we work with kids and you can't force adults. People, I think that's obvious, but you actually can't force kids to be grateful either. You create the conditions. You think about what's in my circle of control, what is outside of my circle of control.
Okay, I don't know why I thought of this, but I'm gonna throw a little test at you.
Oh
Okay.
boy, this
And I'm
sounds
gonna
stressful.
yeah, it is a little stressful. So I thought about this for whatever reason. And I remember it was really distinct. I coached basketball for years, and I'm gonna paint a scenario for you and say what's the tact that's here, right? So like I don't know how familiar you are with basketball. I know I'm like obsessed with it, but there's like a huge coaching thing, and this is gonna apply to teaching in some way. So kids shooting a free throw, and they have two free throws, and then they miss the first one, and you're like, and then the coach says, "You got to make it. You got to make the next one." And it's almost like, you think the kid wanted to miss the first one? Like, is that what they were intending to do? And now you've actually put more stress on them. You've actually made them, you know, struggle. And now they're getting, you know, negative thoughts in their heads. And I remember because this was brought up at a coaching clinic. No kid wants to miss that shot.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to miss that. So, you know, from this lens of gratitude, kid misses the shot, you know, they're not really happy with themselves. What's the coaching tip from a lens of gratitude, what would you say to the kid? And maybe not a sports analogy, but like,
Yeah.
how do you get them to focus to help them see themselves successful? So I cannot remember this podcast. It was like, you ever get a podcast, like you listen to podcasts and it's like, you should listen to this one. I'm like, all right. And then I listened to it and and it was weird because they were talking about practicing. They were talking about three groups of people. There was an experiment and they actually had people who practice shooting, people who didn't practice shooting, and people who visualize shooting and it going in.
Mm.
And the ones that actually practiced and the ones who visualized it going in actually had basically the same growth, whereas the ones who didn't practice and didn't visualize saw nothing. So like there's something there, is that when you actually see yourselves being successful. So how does that, like, how, and I maybe you don't know basketball and maybe that's why I've caught you a little bit here, but like, that like getting someone to focus on that negative is not necessarily helping them to be successful in the future. So where do you see gratitude in that situation? Maybe that's how it's teaching. This is like a on the spot comment.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think that we're not looking to, it's not like everything's, rainbows and bunnies,
Right. Like if a kid screws up in, like, easy one, if a kid
yeah,
screws up in school,
yeah.
hey, why don't do that dumb thing? Do you think the kid's like, I'm going to do dumb things, right? I guess maybe sometimes, but
So and here's what my mind is going to as you're bringing up
sure.
this question that has never been posed to me, but I do love it. Is I like to think about the praise to correction ratio. This is huge for me. This is a very, very big deal. And I want to be so super clear. I'm not saying praise, like vapid praise, like great job. Like I'm talking about
Toxic positivity.
you're right. So like what I would say is, in the best of circumstances, whether it's coaching for sports or whether it's in an interpersonal relationship or academics, is we have to be thoughtful about that we're not always pointing out the negative, that we're not always saying, like, you missed a period there. Why didn't you capitalize this?
Right.
Right. And so thinking about, and I think this is really hard as educators because our whole job is continuous improvement. How can we constantly get
Yeah.
better? But really be thinking about, like, how can we see the good in people and point that out overwhelmingly more than we point out the negative.
Right.
So I mean, just think about the kid who's trying to make the free throw shots. If they like keep missing, oh, you missed, oh, you missed, and
Don't
you're
miss again.
constantly don't miss again. I mean, that's like so, like, that is really not a great motivational talk.
No.
And so really thinking about what are they doing well and how can I show that I see the good in them, and that will motivate them to work harder for the things that they still have to work on. So maybe free throws are not where this kid's hitting
Yeah.
right now, but there's probably other aspects of the game that they are. And so praise being a form of gratitude, you can be like, okay, I saw you really hustling today during practice. That's so amazing. Please keep up the good work. We know that when you practice, you're going to get better at things. So it's not to gloss over areas for improvement,
Mhm.
but it is to make sure that we are, I'm not making this up. There's a praise correction ratio that has been seen in the research. When I got my psychology degree, I was taught 6-1. You will hear 5-1, 4-1, somewhere in that range.
I prefer 80-1 for myself.
Okay, that's fair. But see,
That's
but we
that's
want,
toward me. That's toward me.
I understood. So I'll try and hit that. But I think we have to realize that the reason the 6-1 is because we're trying to improve, right? If it was never about improving, 100,000 to 1, maybe. I don't know. But we are
Right.
actually trying to get to some improvement. It's so easy. And I cannot say this enough. The best way to change someone else's behavior is to change my behavior first. So what can I do to help this person? It's going to be, it's on me. It's on me. So what can I do? I can't will someone into doing it. And I think about that in behaviors in classrooms. If there is a point of friction with one particular child, especially, I mean, if it's with everyone, there's probably some systems we need to look into, some
Mhm.
routines, some procedures that we need to look into. But if you're in friction with one particular child or one particular coworker, for me, I have a teenage daughter. I don't feel like I need to elaborate on that. I have a teenage daughter. So when I am in friction with my teenage daughter, I have to think about what has my praise to correction ratio been? Because I wake up in the morning and I am on, that is my negativity bias peak time. Why is the bed not made? Are we ready to walk out the door?
Uh-huh.
Like, that is a stressful time. So I have to train myself and I have to work on this every single day. When I get up, the first thing I say to my child needs to be a positive. I cannot start the day pointing out something that is negative. And that's not just for their benefit, that's
Right.
mine too. And I think, George, this might resonate with you because you are so good with health, is if you start, like, win the first hour of your day and you will win your day. Like Jim Quick says that. If you start your day eating garbage food, you are more likely to eat garbage food throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah.
If you start your day with negativity, you are more likely to have negativity throughout your day. So,
It's the same thing going to bed too, right? Like it's one of the things I asked Kalia, and she's, more in line to this. Like, hey, what was the best part about your day? Or like what three things you're grateful for? Going to sleep with that mentality. So I think, it's ending and beginning kind of set you up. Now I'm like thinking about, okay, this is the as you're talking about this. So Steph Curry, probably best free throw shooter of all time, and he'll miss 1 out of 10. So like he has perfect form, does everything perfect. He is like known. One of the things he used to do to end every practice was shoot 5 free throws. They had to all go in a row, but they couldn't even touch the rim. It had to just mesh. Like that's how perfectionist he is on this. And so he still misses with perfect form. So instead of focusing on how you miss, which they didn't want to do, it's like, hey, great job doing this. Keep doing that thing. Right. And
yeah.
it's like focus on what they're doing really well. And because it's even when you do it perfectly, it doesn't mean you're going to make it at a time. But the more you do it with proper stance, all that other stuff, I think it's the same thing, right? See what's good, focus on that, like reaffirm the good things that are happening, and then you're more likely to see success. Because even when you're doing everything in a perfect manner, it still doesn't mean you're going to get the perfect outcome, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's no guarantees. We're just trying to create the conditions for ourselves and for others where the best possible outcome is more likely, right? And so I think that that is why I always go back to gratitude is optimizing our happiness, our relationships, and our performance. And that's why I keep with this topic that I've been writing and talking about for years, is because it's so foundational, it's so universal. That doesn't mean that you and I are going to do gratitude practices the same way. And by the way, I have something for you and Kalia if you want it. When when you do your gratitude practices. Sorry, friends, I walked away from the mic. But
I'm gonna
so
I'm gonna like go reach over and see if I can like do a magic trick and pull
can
whatever.
you grab it?
Ah,
So I like adding some like whimsy
that
and
isn't actually specifically for me and Clea though. Like it was like, oh, you can use this, but it wasn't like this is for you and Clea. Like I'm not expecting this in the mail or anything like that.
I can send it in the mail. I
No,
can
it's
send
too
it in
late. I already know it's like for everybody.
the mail. But it's just free on my website.
All right.
And these
Oh,
are
cool.
these are three things dice. And so I realized that because the three things is scientifically backed, like evidence based, doing a three things list will be beneficial for you. But I feel like it's really hard to come up with three new things every night, and it starts to be really redundant if you're not careful with it. So I just one day was like, it would be kind of fun if it was like dice and you add a little bit of chance to it, and maybe you like it or maybe you don't. So the three things, there's one die that has different topics on it, like three laugh out loud things, three epic things, three kind things, three important things. And then on the other die is like the topic. So family, nature, places, friends. So I would roll the dice. And so what came up right now is three epic things that were experiences.
Hmm.
And now I'm like super specific, right? Now, if I don't like it, I'll just roll again.
Oh,
I
yeah.
always tell, I always tell the kids, like, you're not forced into this. But we actually have these at our dinner table. And this has been so helpful for having conversations with our family because it's kind of,
Uh,
you don't always know what to do when you're having conversations at dinner. So I encourage educators to have these in their classroom, let the kids roll the dice, and then you could do it at home with your family. You could have it in the staff lounge. And again, it's like kind of a silly thing, but it's really just trying to bring some whimsy and some fun into gratitude practices.
you're the best. Listen, everyone that's listening right now And there's like what? Now I just got to go like 79 more and you're going to be, and then I could do one mean thing.
Please, yes, yes.
So I could just do the 79 more. Hey, listen, everybody. If you haven't picked it up, I love Lainie. She's absolutely amazing. I find your work has really helped me, especially in times where I struggle. And I know that a lot of schools would really benefit from not only just reading your book, but obviously having opportunities to work with you. So you can actually see Lainie's contact information down below. Check out the book, Evolving with Gratitude, Small Practices and Learning Communities that make a big difference with kids, peers in the world. I encourage you to connect with Lainie because your life will be better just as mine has become. But Lainie, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I just love talking to you. You are like one of my favorite people in the world and my best friend.
Yes, well, you're one of my favorite people. Thank you for having me. And I feel
One
like
of?
I really like, oh, no, sorry. You are my favorite person in the entire world. I
There
hope
you
my
go.
husband and my kids aren't listening to this, but you and your family are very, very special to me. I know I still have a lot more to get to on the ratio that you and I agreed to of 80 to
Okay.
1, but the day it's still
Okay.
morning here where we're
Yeah,
talking.
you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. You got a long time to go in California to be.
But I just want to say, George, thank you for all you do. There's so many things you do behind the scenes to support people like me. You have been such a mentor. I mean, not only are you my BFF, but you've been such a great mentor to me. And you just are really looking out for everyone. And so I just want to say thank you. Thanks for
You're
having
gonna
me.
make me cry. All right. Okay. I don't want to cry on camera here. So everyone, Lainie, thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that. Thanks for listening, Lainie. Thanks so much for your time. We have a wonderful day. Take care.